The photo walk recording is usually made on a Thursday morning. Sometimes a little later, often not. Today, and for reasons I'll discuss in the Extra Mile show, so I don't make this introduction too long, it's being recorded on a Wednesday evening, and there's about an hour and a half to go until it starts to really dip in terms of light. And I brought with me my X Pro 1. So in terms of the cameras I own, this is perhaps the one that's least qualified to deal with light as it gets really low. However, I do love the creamy nature of the photographs that it makes. And so I'm going to start by making a sketchbook photograph for my collection today. Right now, looking down the path, it's a bit dark, actually, because the canopy, the trees overhead, that's certainly adding a lot of cover to the picture. Here we go. What am I at? It's manual, F4. I've set 800 ISO, and I'm at, let's go for a 60th of a second. There we go. Monday just gone was World Photography Day. I apologise that I forgot to send you a greetings card, so accept this as a digital version of that. I can see my other listener giving me that look of, you cheapskate, Neil. You cheapskate. The day honoured the art, the craft, the science and history of photography and encouraged photographers from all over the world, whatever kind of camera you carry, be that film or digital, smartphone, pinhole, to share a single shot that captures your world. Now that seems like such a massive task, doesn't it? It's the sort of thing that photographers like Sebastião Salgado have spent a photographic lifetime trying to find or unpack, and in his case, with the most beautiful, sometimes tragically beautiful results. So I went about thinking, what would I choose as a single shot that captures my world? Maybe I could make one, or perhaps it was a good time to reflect and dip into my archive. So I instantly looked for a known favourite, that being one of my two boys when they were much younger. They were sitting with Sam on the sofa, all having a tickle and a mulch. But as I was poking around the family folder, I found another. It was one of those, oh, yes, of course, moments. It's one of our youngest on the day that he was born. Actually, after what was a very traumatic birth for both mother and baby, it was of a day or two old Thomas in an incubator with little monitors attached to his skin. There was a mouth tube and there's a colour photograph, but I've shared the black and white one on the show page today. I even popped into the back of the incubator his small teddy bear that I bought for some sort of attempt at showing scale, ever the photographer. But alas, in the photograph, I managed to chop Teddy's head off. Cropped, that is, nothing any more sinister. So there was that one. And then I looked around at some of the professional pictures that I've made at weddings. Because over 1,000 weddings, there are hundreds of thousands of pictures, but generally, there's a folder where I keep ones that I'm particularly fond of, moments that I'm particularly fond of. And another thought occurred from a picture I actually only made last year that I'll talk more about on the Extra Mile show today as well. But looking at these pictures, one word popped into my mind that sums up how photography has enriched my life. How it as a pastime, as a job, as a calling, if you will, captures my world rather than a single shot that captures my world. I know in the ebook that I released earlier this year, I talk about empathy and wonder as being my why, but there is, it seems, a third word. And it's a word that describes the pictures I found that fulfill the brief of World Photography Day. And it's a feeling that is vulnerability. Photography has me wanting to record vulnerability, to show it from my perspective and the perspective of others, not in some kind of self-gratifying voyeuristic way, no, but one that allows me to study and see and witness or find and understand humanity. Neil, have you been sniffing the mushrooms in the understory again? Yes, I know. It does sound a little overly woo of the woo, but I do mean that. A very good friend of mine reminded me just the other day of something said by a guest on this show, the photographer Karen Mayoka, who said, "The camera is my translator to everything that I want to understand." Oh, how good is that? Huh? And I have a feeling that's exactly what the camera is for my guest today, a German, Scottish, Argentinian documentary photographer. His picture making now as a career documentarian takes him to places where, here comes the V word, where vulnerability is a strong part of the narrative in his storytelling. He doesn't simply parachute into places, make pictures and leave. He returns often, over and over again, to some people, some places, making photographs that, if you'll allow me to use the woodland term again, really investigate the understory of an issue. The youth of Belfast in Northern Ireland, Olympians that emerge from the favelas of Brazil, socially disadvantaged neighbourhoods of Duisburg in Germany. His black and white stories, they are stark, they're bold, yet they are hopeful. And they're stories of vulnerability. And his name is Toby Binder.
Today on the Photo Walk.
I meet so many people I don't know, they just in the streets and they, hey. So I like to connect with people. When you think about how you could really change things, I mean, I always say that probably they just have to go to school together. I mean, if there would be more integrated schools, then probably many things will change more quick than now. Back in the days, one of my really best friends from art school, he once said, "Well, Toby, sometimes I believe you shoot the camera without a film in it, you know? You just use the camera to get in touch with the people and to talk to them."
That's Toby Binder, my guest today, and welcome along as we make our Photo Walks together, a show where we walk and make pictures, photographically sketchbooking our time together each week. Enjoying the letters and inspirational stories you've sent in, and there's many of those today, and listening back to special studio conversations with guests from around the world. I'll take a peek into the mailbag in a moment for a flavour of today's letters into the show, but before that, thank you to our extra milers and also MPB who sponsor this show and keep us here week on week. Go to mpb.com/change. They're the largest global platform to buy, sell and trade in used photo and video gear, committed to making gear more accessible and affordable, changing the bigger picture, putting camera gear in more hands and keeping the story going. Now, I like a few numbers, so let me serve you up the following. 625,000 visual storytellers have been served by MPB. 570,000 cameras, lenses and accessories have been recirculated. And there's a new number now, 40,487 reviews on Trustpilot have come up with a rating for MPB, which is one word, excellent. And my company, my photographic company, is one of those 40,487 and rising who've left a lot of stars. More numbers, Neil, more. Well, their business model is 100% circular. All packaging is 100% plastic free. Their cloud-based platform uses, guess what? 100% renewable electricity. MPB are the largest global platform to buy, sell and trade used photo and video kit. A simple, a safe and circular way to trade, upgrade and get paid for the kit that you may no longer use. I use them myself. I'm very happy. Go to mpb.com/change. I'll put a link on the show page as well today. On the show then, letters from Wallace Shackleton. He's on a motorbike with a camera in howling wind and the kind of rain that makes you wish you'd stayed in bed that day. Bob Rose takes us to a lake in Nebraska at sundown, surrounded by what sounds like, well, at least 100,000 birds, maybe more, you be the judge. Corey Cooper shares a film about the why of this thing that we do. Don Ridgway is in Ontario with William Shakespeare of all people. Christopher Harrison shares his perspective on vulnerability. And Susan Larsson is under a beautiful northern light sky. Plus, Valérie Jardin is here with visual stories. This month, she's going to the State Fair. I told you there's lots in this show. Shall we walk then? Checklist out. Coffee. Check. Garibaldi's. Check. Walking shoes. Check. SD cards or a spare roll of film. Check. Let's walk. The Photo Walk is a show for those who find escapism and peace away from the noise of this world, putting miles under our feet and making a picture or three to remind us of where those footprints were left. And you're a part of this, a big part, with your pictures and your letters and your postcards and your thoughts. So, from the mailbag this week, I'm going to start with the most explory sounding listener and friend of the show. New word alert, explory, yes. Because that's exactly what he sounds like and actually now is. An explory explorer. It's our friend Wallace Shackleton, lifelong aircraft enthusiast, super photographer. He is living my dream on that count and the next because he's also a motorcycling explorer with a camera. And he kicks us off with a postcard that will be on the show page today. This postcard isn't one of the fabulous vistas that he sees as he rides the undulating wilds of his homeland, Scotland and beyond. No, it's a small campsite in the corner of a field in Europe, but it does come with a story, which follows a theme from our two guests last week, who spoke of their fathers and the impact that they'd had on their creative lives. Once again, Neil, says Wallace, I'm listening to your podcast at stupid o'clock and may have gone off at half cock with what I heard, but for about 10 years, I too was looking after my dad following a stroke and dementia, and it was only after he'd passed that I was able to get on my bike and explore again. This year, I went on a 4,000-mile trip to southern Sweden, and here is my postcard. A 4,000-mile trip, Wallace. Just think of how many frames, how many pictures that probably equates to. My postcard, though, is a picture following a week on the road and my first night in Sweden after an interesting day. It's a story of weather, which got steadily worse as I crossed Denmark. First it was heavy rain. The helmet visor was well and truly steamed up. I could hardly see where I was going. And then there was a brutal crosswind as I rode across the Great Belt Bridge. No kidding, it was one scary crossing. Now, for my other listener, because I know you know this, the Great Belt Bridge is 11 miles long. I think it's part tunnel. That bit I'm guessing a bit. I think there's some tunnel in there. Part road, part suspension, part box girder bridge in Denmark land. It joins between several islands, and it I think, again, are you guessing, Neil? No, I'm sure I saw the number 30,000. 30,000 cars, lorries or motorcycles cross it in a day. You can't walk it, and you certainly can't cycle across it because of those crosswinds. Although I did also spy, when I was reading about it yesterday, that a couple of years back, the bridge was actually crossed as part of one of the stages of the Tour de France. Anyway, back to Wallace. Large queues formed as I fumbled to find my wallet to pay the toll, but never was money so readily paid to get off a bridge. Once over, my rain gear started to leak because, due to the fumbling for cash, I hadn't redone everything up properly. I was, sorry, Wallace, I'm not laughing. I was soaked to the skin en route to Copenhagen before reaching Helsingør for the ferry to Sweden, but Denmark, it seemed, had finally run out of rain, so it was reasonably dry for the last few kilometres to my campsite. And upon arrival, there was a notice saying they had a wedding party that night and the music was going to go on till 3 a.m. But at this point, I'm too tired, wet and totally scunnered to care. Time to get something to eat, dry out the gear and forget about the day. Tomorrow will be better. Maybe. All the best, Wallace. P.S. It wasn't. Better, that is. But But why, Wallace? What happened? There's a part 2 to this, isn't there? Is it a part 2 weather event? Or did you end up with 200 dad dancers in your tent for the wedding well into the next day? You have to write now and tell us. Anyway, this postcard that Wallace has sent in is, well, I think it's a postcard of a drying out event. A postcard of life, I suppose, of life on the road as a biker. But I do love your setup. Oh, I'll pop this on the show page. Exploring with just a small tent, a motorbike and a camera. One bike and a camera. See? I've already named the podcast. I have this dream, Wallace, of it's a bit of a photo fantasy of riding Route 66. Cliche though that dream may sound. Me aboard a massive Harley, stopping at motels rather than camping. I'm not so sure I want to wake up to a cuddle from a rattlesnake in the morning, but generally exploring with my camera and a bike. Riding into the sunset. A golden hour shot each day of a road rolling beyond me and the ghost towns and all those sort of amazing places. But there are a few obstacles to my dream, namely finances, a dog that would never forgive me, although he's not with me for this walk today, and having only ever ridden a 125cc scrambler that my friend long-haired Mick owned, and dropping that immediately, much to the rolling of his eyes. I'm starting this fantasy rather too big for my own biker boots, I would imagine. But your postcard is on the show page today. I think, by the way, we, the royal we, that is, should end the postcards with "Wish you were here," which I never really quite understood. But it is the fodder of postcard etiquette, isn't it? Wish you were here. Wish you were here. Wish you were here. I mean, why you'd want Great Auntie Maud to be on your road trip across America, I wouldn't understand. Unless, of course, Great Auntie Maud is a demon on a Harley. Maybe that sunset is coming earlier than I thought, or the clouds, because tomorrow's promising lots of rain. Oh, rain in August, Neil, in England lands? Surely not. Maybe this is the bleu that's just arriving at platform whatever early. But let me just put your letters down for a second. Get a picture of for my sketchbook album, a sketchbook photograph. I'm remembering to say that. You'll find out why that's relevant later on. I'm going to have to change. I'm going to have to change up my shutter speed a bit here. 2.8, 60th of a second. I dare go higher than 800 ISO on this X Pro 1, this Fuji X Pro 1. Otherwise, it's going to look a bit like a snowstorm. Here we go. I'm looking back down the path. It's there's a sort of vanishing point in the photograph. I'll put my sketchbook photos on the show page today. Here we go. There's a lovely satisfying sound to the shutter in the X Pro 1, isn't there? I'll do it again, just for the giggles. Let's get your letters. I need a bit of help, please. Really, Neil? You surprised me. It helps the show to be discovered if you leave a review on Apple Podcasts. To do that, just go to the Apple Podcasts app, search up The Photo Walk, or you should be there already if you're listening to the podcast on that app. Spotify have the same as well, and then leave just a few words as a review. That way, the great podcast sphere recognises us more and suggests us to more people who may like to walk with us. My thanks, I'm going to read off a couple. Thank you for making them. My thanks to Jasper this week from the UK, a 5-star Jasper, thank you, honestly. He said, you don't have to be interested in photography to make this a worthwhile listen, but if you are, it's even more satisfying. The subjects covered are very wide-ranging and too numerous to list here. Suffice to say, it's not all about the tech. And then Ted Manasseh from the US, the podcast, he says, for photographers who shoot for meaning and story as much as visual merit. Oh, I like that. Spend the time to walk with Neil and his guests as he gets to what matters most, the why. Thank you, Jasper. Thank you, Ted. And thank you if you do go and leave us a review. We might well be reading yours out on the show. Right, a first visit to my guest, Toby Binder, in a moment, but I'd like to do a brace of, reasonably quick-fire messages into the show. Bob Rose, first up, from back in April. Oh, you've been maturing this letter, haven't you, Neil? I certainly have. You see, Bob, I knew I'd get to this, and I'm going to pop your film you mentioned on the show page today, but if you don't mind, I'm going to play the sound of your film underneath the letter, because it wonderfully sets the scene, even though I know we're a few months on, and the migration and so on and so forth, it's happened by now. All the same, let's play some sounds. Oh, listen to this. This is what Bob recorded. Hi Neil, I've been a listener of the Photo Walk since episode 1. Recently, I took advantage of my free time as a retiree to take photos of sandhill cranes here in Nebraska, USA, as they migrate north for the summer. For some reason, these majestic birds have captured my fancy. And looking at your pictures, Bob, which are also on the show page, I completely understand why. Technically, he says, I was not on a photo walk, but I thought you might find my adventure interesting. Bob, if you stop and make pictures, it still counts as a photo walk. I rented a small blind, or a hide if you like, from the Roe Sanctuary, and I spent an evening and following morning taking photos as the cranes came in to spend the night on the river and take off in the morning. Here's a short, it's a 6.5 minute video with crane song, which is what you're hearing right now, to help the viewers get the full effect from the pictures. Absolutely marvellous pictures, Bob. They really are. Those photos as the sun goes down, absolutely delicious. Look at the glorious colours of our amazing planet. And the birds, they're super chaps and chapesses, aren't they? With they look like they're wearing small little red masks. Thousands upon thousands of them. And then here's Corey Cooper with a note from, this one's even further back, right at the start of the year. Such is the sometimes random approach to when letters appear, as you've gathered. Hope you're doing well, Neil. Just a quick note on the now infamous Y. I was recently watching on YouTube Courtney Victoria, and she took the Y to a new yet thought-provoking level, and I thought you might enjoy this. Now, Corey, I did at the time see this film. You've reminded me of it, of course. I've watched it again a couple of times now. It's coincidental that the video was sponsored by MPB, although I'm delighted to see that it was. That's not the reason for the mention. I shall embed the film on the show page today, but essentially it's a super, as you say, thought-provoking film about the subject of why we make photographs and why we go through, I suppose with a lowercase or case S, why we go through the struggles of such as lugging heavy bags around to make our pictures. And she does the film and the subject, covers the subject through the medium of macro. Here's just a moment to whet your appetite.
Why do I want to experience fleeting moments? To enjoy life. When you do things that you enjoy, you're more likely to want to do them more often, and you're more likely to be productive at doing it. So even though the answer is really, really simple, it's a great reminder that this journey should be fun. And if I'm not enjoying it, then something has gone wrong somewhere. I've lost myself somewhere, whether that's frustration, pressure, expectations, whatever it is. And I need to get myself back on track and reset my mindset.
Now, the film is made outdoors in woodland. The best part of 8 minutes into this 10.5 minutes wonderfully reflective film, it really is. Courtney talks about how competition or a competitive nature can affect us mentally when comparing our work to others. And I have to mention also, and that's a really strong part of the film, and I have to mention the new lens wiggle. It's a particular dance. It appears about halfway into the film, actually, but you get the full dance at the end. It's a particular dance that you practice when you try out a new lens for the first time. I shall, of course, be practicing my own for the next new lens day that I have. Super film. It really is, full of gentle character, and it's on the show page today, embedded in the video library part of the page. Right, to my guest, Toby Binder. Toby is a documentary photographer known for his powerful long-tail projects on working-class life. Based in Argentina and Germany, his work often explores post-war and crisis situations, as well as the everyday lives of people. His photography has earned international recognition. There are awards from Lens Culture, Life Framer, the Sony World Photo Awards. His shelves must be buckling under the pressure of awards. You'll see his work as well in top publications like The Guardian, Le Monde, The Washington Post. And in 2019, he released his first photo book, We Muckers, Youth of Belfast, which we will talk about later on today. But we'll start with some thoughts about the international language of football and how that can relate to opportunity and class. Part one, then, of two parts today with my guest, Toby Binder.
Toby, you're I was going to say Swabian, but the correct pronunciation is Schwaben. Is that right, photographer? A region of southwest Germany, though I think by the looks of your bio, you've traced your roots back to be Scottish-Argentinian.
Well, I think, to be honest, this is more like I just felt that I fit much more into Argentina and maybe even Scotland than into Germany.
Really?
So I decided, So I thought maybe it was just a mistake, that I was born in Germany and tried to define my roots on my own. But I grew up in the southwest of Germany, and that's where I'm originally from.
Well, this is an interesting moment then. I'm a bit intrigued. The Euros have finished now. I'm always a little bit hesitant of asking questions about football competitions when all the clubs you've lost and you've moved on. However, the opening match was Scotland versus Germany. What jersey did you wear when you were supporting that match?
Well, to be honest, I had my Scotland shirt because, the opening game was in the town where I live right now in Munich.
Yeah.
I would never go to the stadium because I hate Bayern Munich, so I don't enter the ground. But I met many friends coming from Scotland to see that match, and we just met in the city centre, and it was obvious that I had to wear my Scotland shirt.
So are you a Stuttgart fan? I know that you did a project about them, and we'll come to it in a moment. Is that where is that the football jersey I would find in your cupboard?
Not only one.
You did document some football in Scotland, though, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, like I said, I grew up with football. I played myself. I went to all the Stuttgart matches, and I love football. So when I came to Scotland the first time, I immediately fell in love with the country, the people, the landscape, all that. But also, I was really surprised about the passion of the Scottish people for football, because they are not really successful, to be honest, and anyway they don't care. They have such a big passion for the sports, and I think that's what football should be about, So I like the mentality of the Scottish people and the way they feel and they live the football.
Yeah.
So I decided to make a project about the love of the Scottish people for football and try to show it really from the top end, the Premier League, all the stadiums, the clubs, the matches, but also the kids just playing in the streets. And you can find this, or you could find this back then in Scotland in many places.
I grew up listening on Saturdays with Dad to the football scores coming in on the teleprinter. And the Scottish ones had the best names. Heart of Midlothian. And you don't find better football club names in any other part of the world. I think Scottish club names lead the way in that respect. Were you due to become a footballer then? Or did I dream that? Was there a part of you that was hoping to be a pro footballer?
Yeah, sure. When you're young, you think about, you dream of that. And I was not that bad. So when I played in my little youth team, some of the friends, they just tried, to get to the better teams. But my parents told me that's maybe not the best option. Just try to focus on your stuff. And in the end, I played football in a club. It was a good level, but not close to professional. It was just it was for fun, and I meet my friends once a week in the park, and we just play for fun. So,
well, we've got quite a few projects to talk about. I don't want this to seem like it's a conversation only about football, but I am going to ask you about Stuttgart. It's over 10 years ago. You shot a project called 1 Year, One Club, One Photographer, following the Bundesliga club Stuttgart. Your team. It's a dream access moment, isn't it, really? Because you got to sit pitch side for sure, but you didn't point your cameras out towards the players. You pointed your camera back in towards the fans. Tell me about that project.
Well, I mean, it was for the 120-year anniversary of the club, and they just wanted to do a project. They made 3 books, and one book was the photo book, just only photography. And the idea was to show the whole thing that makes a club. I mean, of course, it's the players, but also the staff and the fans and the supporters and the stadium, and everything that happens on a weekend. And so for me, it was very difficult because it sounded like a job that has to be done by 3 or 4 photographers, but I was just on my own, so it was always difficult to decide where to go. And in the end, I tried to make a plan, maybe to go on this day here, on that day there. But in the end, I just tried to follow my instincts and try to just cover what I think what a club makes. And so it was a huge variety of photos. And like you said, I mean, I know that I'm not a sports photographer. I'm trying to just do a documentary similar to what I did in Scotland. And it was very interesting, but also sometimes very frustrating because there is still so many rules that somehow narrow your possibilities to move. And that was somehow tricky. But in the end, it was great. I mean, it was a great year.
There's one particular photograph of the manager on the touchline, who I think is Bruno Labbadia, isn't he? Yeah, wasn't he called the Pistolero or something? Wasn't he, from his goal celebration? He was a tremendous player, wasn't he, in his day?
He was a great player.
Not so well a manager, I think. He cuts a very lonely figure. You've isolated him from everything from the angle of the photograph that you made, and I'll leave a link to your website so you can go and see that. And there are other moments too that show that football can be a bit of a lonely game for the managers and the players. You might be surrounded by tens of thousands of fans, but it can be quite a lonely existence.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially for the managers, I mean, they're just responsible if they're not successful. The manager is the first one who is blamed, and probably because it's the easiest way to do it. And I mean, I spent quite a while with observing what's happening. And I had the feeling that sometimes he's just very lonely with all the decisions he has to make. And so that was the idea of this photo, to show that there is a huge pitch and there are many players on the pitch and there are more people on the stands. But in the end,
We're going to talk about access a lot today. You had a lot of access there. You were flying on the plane, for example, with the players at times. The access you had to them, it looked to me through the photographs, and obviously I'm not seeing the full collection, you had to sort of win their trust, I'm sure, in many respects, but it looked like they just accepted you as one of the team almost.
Yeah, it was. I think I have to mention 2 things when talking about the access. I mean, of course, the access was much easier when they were successful. When they won a game, I could enter all the locker rooms and all that. When they lost, it was somehow like, okay, not now. And it was not the best year of Stuttgart. I mean, there came even worse later on, but it was not that they won too many games. So it was somehow difficult to, these moments that I was interested in to get, because, I think football is also, I mean, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And maybe it's even more interesting when you lose, because there are so many photos of celebrating players. But what happens to them when they lose? I mean, this is maybe even more interesting. And then, of course, a team is not like a homogeneous group. I mean, there are so many different individual players, and I got really good connection to some of them. And till today, I'm in touch with some of the players I got to know back then.
There's a very specific area of interest that I'd like to move on to. A distinct photographic focus upon the working class. And I wonder why that's become your main interest, and what you document, what you show, the stories that you tell around the world.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, football was somehow the entrance to that. I mean, I told you I played football from when I could walk, and then when I started this project in Scotland, I was interested in taking photos of people playing football just in the streets, because I think it's a big topic nowadays that all the youth players go to the academies and they get all they need even when they're very young, and you don't have these street footballers anymore. I mean, when I was in Scotland, I really could see that there were so many kids just playing in the streets. And of course, it was more in the working class neighborhoods. And it was just interesting for me to get in touch with these kind of people. And it was so interesting when I met the young kids that They told me it's also some kind of way out of poverty. I always say I somehow have to like the people I photograph because, I spend so much time with them. And
I was very surprised to read with one of your projects closer to home for you that despite the wealth of the industrial powerhouse that we think of as Germany, the 1 in 5 children live in poverty. That was I don't know whether that figure's still the same. I don't know. It wasn't a headline I expected to read. 053 kids. I know these are postcode digits, but tell me about this place.
Well, I just started that kind of work. In the past, I always thought Germany is too boring. I don't find any topics I'm really interested in to shoot, and most of my projects were abroad. And then during COVID, I couldn't travel, and I had to find something here. And I just made this project, the huge project in Belfast, and thought about shooting something similar. And I was just doing some research on German society, and I found this particular neighborhood in Duisburg that used to be a very industrialized city, lots of steel, coal, all that kind of stuff. And of course, that's not anymore. So it's an area that is really changing a lot within the last years. And I found that neighborhood where, I think far more than 90% of the under 18-year-old have migration background. So it's a very international place. And I went there and I got in touch with the kids, and I was so surprised, because they spoke the local dialect to me, and they have German passports, but they don't feel, they told me, well, but we are not Germans, because they don't feel accepted. And I thought that's a very interesting, very sad and problematic topic also, but very interesting. When I talked to them, I realized it's very similar to when I was young and I spoke to my friends, with migration background. They had the same problems, and I was really shocked and surprised that it's still today like that.
When you're making such intimate pictures of youth in terms of social message, and it's a subject I'll come back to since you mentioned Northern Ireland, we'll talk about Northern Ireland in quite some depth in a moment. How do you gain the trust of those who are in front of your lens? You mentioned that you got in touch with the kids and they kind of just accepted you. It can't be as easy as that. There's bridges to cross and friendships to forge, aren't there?
Yeah, sure. But in the end, I think it's just a matter of time and a matter of honesty, and because, they really realize very quickly if you just come there and say, okay, can I take some photos, and then disappear again? Yeah. Or if you ask them if you can take photos, and then you take the photos when they're standing like this and posing, and then you keep on going, and then they see, okay, it's not only one photo, and then you come back maybe some weeks later and you show them the photos, you give them the prints, and they realize, okay, there is really somebody interested in what's happening here. And I think, it always takes time to create that trust. And I think then you can start to work when you got that trust.
Do you write pieces as well? You're the journalist and the photojournalist when you're in these situations, surely, aren't you?
Yeah, but I think I should more write down, because in the end, it's, I don't do, I don't have any questions, and I just go like question 1, question 2. It's more the conversation when you wait for the right photo, you just talk to them, and you get so much interesting things to know. And of course, I don't write it down immediately. In the evening, maybe sometimes I just write down when I got something very interesting. But I think I should do that more, because I think you get lots of good information just in this casual talk and when you just chat to them.
I'm still interested in how you research the whole thing, how you go into the neighborhood, because you're going into very tight communities, very tight neighborhoods. I'm sure when they look around and they see strangers, there's a sense of distrust.
Yeah, sure.
So those very first approaches that you make, and this goes for all the stories you make in Afghanistan, in Malawi, which we'll come to as well. It's integrating yourself. I still don't quite understand how that happens, unless you're just naturally very, very good at it, of course.
To be honest, I don't really know how to explain it, because I just try to be myself, and I try to be friendly to the people and open to the people. When I approach them, I don't try to shoot photos from a distance and try to hide the camera. Most of the time, I shoot with a big analog camera so people can see what I'm doing. And then I just go to them and I tell them what I want to do. And if somebody says, okay, I don't want to be part of it, I'm fine with it. You have to respect the people, because like you said, I'm entering their territory somehow. So I try to explain to the people what I want, and most of the time it works out.
We should talk about Northern Ireland. You don't have to look too far when reading about you online to read the following words. Let me quote. "If I had been born at the top of my street behind the corrugated iron border, I would have been British. I was one street away from being born my enemy." That's a pretty strong introduction to this particular project, this celebrated work, We Muckers. It's a post-Brexit project, but how does that quote, how does that sentiment represent this work? Who said it and why?
Well, this was a quote by Paul McRae. He's a Belfast-born novelist, and I found this word in a text he wrote when I did some research for publishing my book. And I thought this was so interesting because it's just so true. I mean, if you know Belfast, you have these separated neighborhoods, but in the end, there is just this wall cutting the road. And if you're born on the one side, you're part of one community. If you're born on the other side, you're part of the other community. And till today, it feels like, I mean, we talk now more than 20 years after the peace agreement, and it's still, if you're in a town, you still feel that kind of division. I mean, it's getting better, but you still feel that kind of division, especially in these working class communities. And I think not that many people question it like Paul was doing it. And I thought just this quote is so strong and fits very good. So I asked him if he can write maybe an introduction to my book and if I can use the quote. And
The young people, I know through a bit of experience, people that I've spoken with, I've visited, but not much. The young people that you're photographing, some of them are now more likely to form relationships, friendships, marriages even, across their divides. Did you get a sense that the youth are trying to build those friendships and those connections, whilst there are some that are still pulling them back from other generations?
Yeah, I think that's also the very interesting thing why I work with this generation and people in that age, because they still try. I mean, they are somehow locked in their communities, but they try to push the borders, and it's their future, and they have to decide even in which direction the city and the country will go. So that was very interesting for me to follow, and I have to tell you two little stories that somehow show the reality today. When I started the project, I just crossed the walls. I mean, the gates are open during the day, so you can go from one side to the other side. And in 2017, 18, I realized, okay, but I'm the only one going through. I take photos on the one side, and then I go to the other side. I cross the gate, but nobody else is doing it. And in 2018, I found a young couple crossing the gate, and I was like, oh, wow. And I just ran after them and asked them, hey, where are you going? Are you from this side? Are you from that side? And then they told me, he was from one side, she from the other side. They had a relationship. I somehow stood in touch with them. I took a few photos of them, and then I met them 1 year later. They had a little daughter then. But then they told me no more photos because there was some pressure of the communities. They told them, hey, this is not possible. You can't do this. If you're together, you can't stay in our communities and things like that. In the end, they split up, and I also somehow lost contact. But then one of the boys I photographed in 2017, and he was back then, I think he was 15, 16, and he was always like, we hate the people from the other side. And he was from a Republican community, and he was like, we hate the Protestants. And now he is together with a girl from the Protestant side, and they have a kid together, and he even moved to a loyalist community. Wow. So this happens, yeah. But I think the pressure is still very high on the people. I mean, especially on the young people. The pressure, what they have to be, what ideas they have to represent. And I think you need to be a strong character, to fight against this pressure and say, okay, maybe you think this, but I decided for myself another way.
Taking those pressures on board then for a moment, and you're embedding yourself with one side, and then you're crossing that wall through the open door as it is during the daytimes, as you say, at least, and then you're in the other side. Did you find any friction there that they think, well, 1 minute you're there and 1 minute you're with us? Was there any friction or? Were you broadly
Not at
welcomed?
all. In the beginning, I always thought, okay, maybe they find it's weird that I tried to cover both communities. It was so funny because, they told me, hey, here it's no problem. You can shoot here and you can work with us. You're safe, but don't go to the other side. They will punch you or they will steal your camera. And I said, okay, but I was 10 minutes ago, I was on the other side and they told me exactly the same about you. And then I realized, when I brought back the photos, I just had all the photos in one little envelope, and I showed them the photos, and I had those of the other community I had just on the back end of the envelope, and then I realized that they liked the photos that I took of them, but they were much more interested of the photos that I took on the other side. Ooh. Because they were like, oh wow, it looks like that over there, and I said, okay, it's only a 10-minute walk and you have never been there. And like you said, I think it's getting better now. The people are maybe getting used to move more from one part to the other part. I think it happens more and more. And in the end, when you think about how you could really change things, I always say that probably they just have to go to school together. If there would be more integrated schools, then probably many things will change more quick than now.
Toby Binder is my guest today, and in the second half of our conversation, we talk about this wonderful passport to curiosity that photography is. On that note, we have a poem for the path today as we walk, and it's from Chuck Bennorth. Hello, Neil. This is my afternoon to get some of my correspondence with you and the photo walk taken care of, so a few emails are being sent across over the pond, and this one is my poem for the path submission. Back in the fall of 2012, I had a photo and writing day, which included time of the local Revolutionary War reenactment, followed by a trip to Lake Geneva in Wisconsin. Now, Lake Geneva is a pretty lake surrounded by nice homes, restaurants, and plenty of photo opportunities. That day, I was fortunate to get some photos of some musicians warming up for a wedding, a young couple trying to do pregnancy selfies, plus the beauty of the homes and weather around the lake. And the day ended with putting my camera down and picking up pen and paper to write the following poem called Simple Pleasures.
17 and 70 to 12 and 20, soldiers and cannons, smoke aplenty. Quartets of strings, music floating, brides and grooms, their moments approaching. A couple's baby bump proudly showing their expectant faces, simply glowing, sun setting the mansion alight, piled up clouds, an amazing sight. Little ones playing on the shore, pastel chairs to be used no more. My camera and I out together, these are the images caught forever. Now by the quiet water sitting, I review in my mind the day's shooting. And I am thankful once more for the simple pleasures I adore.
If you have a poem for the path like Chuck Bennorth, and that includes any sort of poetic thoughts, haiku perhaps, that embraces your love of walking with a camera and photography, then send it to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. We're actually doing creative writing, and that may cover poetry, of course, on the Scottish retreat this year, which is in a couple of weeks' time. I can't believe it's come around now so quickly. 2 weeks in Scotland this year. Yes, 2 wonderful groups of photo walkers. Although I do think we need a better collective noun, something like, I don't know, passion of photographers, a soul of photographers. Anyway, we have a full house for 2 weeks. But that doesn't, sadly, include our friend Don Ridgway, who sent this in a few months back. Neil, I felt the tug of temptation every time you announced the Scottish retreat. Pat, my wife, and I have visited 3 times now, each time better than the last. So it sounds delightful. It is, Don, it is. But you're offering it at exactly the same time as we're in Stratford, Ontario, in Canada land, mid to late September. This is another repeat travel destination for us, spending a week and a half with William Shakespeare and other playwrights. My word. Don, is the great bard alive and well and living in the parallel Stratford dimension of Canada land? But then he also sent a picture of a bust of William Shakespeare in what's known as Shakespeare Garden, where where Don is wiping bird what's-it from Mr. Shakespeare's forehead. Good job, sir. Very respectful. Well done. I would have published this picture, but it arrived as one that was, well, I think about 480 pixels wide. Or was it 440? I can't read my writing. 480. So it's a bit too small, really, for the show page. But when you sent the letter and picture in, we must have been talking about photographing power lines, or actually it was further along this path. I was talking about being underneath one of the power towers that carry the lines. And I think I might have been a bit unsure as why I needed to grab a picture. Because there are a few postscripts to this letter. P.S. Neil, you did and said what Gary Winogrand said. You photographed something, in brackets, power line tower, to see what it would look like if you photographed it. That must have been the reason I did it. And then P.P.S. Pat mildly objects to you referring to a sketchbook photo as a sketchbook. Can you offer a defence, spelt with an S, or in your country, a defence, spelt with a C? No, not really. No, I can't. I don't know why I call it a sketchbook when I should just call it a sketchbook photo, shouldn't I? It's lazy, frankly. And Pat, I apologise. It is. You're right. You're absolutely right to be. What was it described as? To be, or to find mild objection. I've changed it already today. I hope you noticed. I hope, Pat, you noticed. I can't promise I'll always do it, not for a short while anyway, because it's become a bit of a habit. But in a letter about visiting William Shakespeare, let's at least pay attention to the words we use. Pat, I don't want you having to mildly object again. If you'd like to send in pictures of where you walk, stories of where you've travelled, then I do love to hear from you on the photo walk. It's a very, very busy show page today. And anything that you send in, pictures, we put on the show page. And if you send us your websites, your Flickr, whatever, Instagram handles, Vero, then I'll make sure I put that as a link on the page as well. Send your pictures in. If you can resize to 2,500 pixels wide, you are an absolute hero. If you can't, don't worry, but make sure your email client, is it client? Email system doesn't resize it to super, super small, as often does happen with email. It says, oh, I know what you want to do. You want to have this really, really small, you do, when you don't. It's that part of the show where we need to set you an assignment, which well, it won't be me. It'll be Emily Renier doing that in a moment. But first, a shutter sync. These are coming in nicely, actually. You're being very good to me, you are. Now, shutter sync, just in case you haven't heard it before, is where, and this is where I'd like you to prepare your camera. So while I'm telling those that haven't heard the feature before what it's all about, you can be readying your camera, whatever that may be, including smartphones, by the way, very much included. It's where we all take a picture at the same time. That's what the sync bit is. Synchronization, shutter sync. And it really is an opportunity for you to send your picture in to stories at photowalk.show. And it shows me and my other listener where you are when you're listening to the show. Sometimes it's a bit surprising, I have to say. Some super, super pictures on the show page today for this feature, including what Steve Anker does as he listens to the show. Is he, I'm going to give you a multiple choice here, is he A, building model aeroplanes, B, painting his vintage car, or C, making a plum tart? So none of those involve actually walking anywhere, which doesn't matter. As long as you're emotionally with us as we make our walk. So let's do a shutter sync. I'm going to count down from 3 to 1. 3, 2, 1. Then it'll be click, and then you send your picture in. This is where you are. So stop where you are. No cheating. It has to be exactly where you are, and we're going to make a shutter sync together. So let me turn on my camera. I've just stopped, and I'm pointing the camera along the path, which is where I'm walking, 60th of a second. Let's do it. 3, 2, 1, and click. That is my shutter sync. What's yours? Also, it's time to set you an assignment for the month. Although first a letter from Kevin Sullivan with his picture on the show page today to go with the following words. Dear Neil, all the very best to you and yours from America land. I haven't been in touch for what seems like a very long time. I know. Where have you been, Kev? You don't send postcards. I didn't receive a Christmas card. All right, don't rub it in, Neil. But I do have you in my earbuds, which always makes me feel that I'm right there with you and Barney and your other listener. No Barney today. He's done his morning walk. It was quite a long one, actually. And so I sort of popped out with it. He gave me that, do we have to go walking? Look. And so I just popped out with my camera today. But usually Barnes is with me, isn't he? I've been intrigued by the one-word assignments, Neil, and I thought I'd toss one in. Whimsy. The word is whimsy. It's an assignment I feel comforting while I attempt to herd all the cats life seemed to fling at us all. Here's a picture of my good friend Uriah asking politely for a bedtime treat. Uriah, by the way, is a four-legged, dog-flavoured friend. And look at those eyes, Kevin. Come on. Surely you said yes to the treat. There's no way you could refuse him. But I like that word, whimsy. Whimsy. We may well come back to that. Unless you want to send in a couple of pictures that say whimsy atop the assignment for this month. And here it is. It's set by our friend Emily Renier. And you have, well, it's only 2 weeks left now to join in.
The Photo Walk assignment.
Emily, it's a one-word assignment. What's your one word going to be? And just explain a little bit about what you're perhaps looking for.
Okay, so my one word is going to be energy. And I probably go for energy because whenever I get really good feedback from a bride or from a mum or a dad, it's usually because they love the energy in my pictures. And it's also a good word because it makes you work hard at your frames and what you include in a frame, what you decide to leave out. So it makes you think about composition, about movement and about emotion, but all in one way. So energy.
The very best of luck to you. Send your pictures to stories@photowalk.show, stories@photowalk.show. As I said a moment ago, 2,500 pixels wide. If you can resize them for the optimization we need for the show pages and assignment pages and so on. If you can't, don't worry. Send the full res in. I'll do the heavy lifting. No watermarks, please. Don't put borders or frames around them. But do send me any links that you would like me to use to link back to your page or your Instagram and so on. Good luck. There's the assignment for this month. It's the photo walk of a Friday. Me with your letters and a camera, you with your cameras and your thoughts. And ahead of our visit from Valérie Jardin for this month's Visual Stories feature, a perfect letter from Chris Harrison. And this letter, well, in many respects, it too influenced my thoughts at the head of today's show, because it's all about vulnerability. Vulnerability, Neil, is our superpower as photographers. I think it's a feeling that's deeply influenced my own journey, says Chris, as a photographer. Taking photographs is more than just capturing a scene or a moment. It's about revealing a part of ourselves, a personal part. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open up to the raw emotion, the subtle detail, and all those imperfections that make a photograph really resonate with yourself and with other people. And it's in those moments of vulnerability that we connect with the world around us, creating photographs that aren't just to be seen, but are also to be felt. Oh, Chris, I'm having this straight away. Being vulnerable in photography means embracing uncertainty, allowing the unexpected to unfold, and being honest about what we see and show. It's about acknowledging that each photograph is a piece of our perspective, shaped by our emotions and our experiences. So let's embrace vulnerability. says Chris. Thanks for all you do on the show. I look forward to my Fridays with you. I imagine by now you might start to hide behind that sofa of flattery. Perhaps there's vulnerability to be embraced there, you know. All the best, Chris. I don't need to add to that, Chris. That's wonderful, because when I was looking through the letters into the show, everything seemed to jigsaw beautifully together with the introduction that I was formulating or writing, and the people Toby Binder, my guest, photographs. So thank you indeed for that. If you'd like to send your thoughts in, then stories@photowalk.show, stories@photowalk.show, with pictures, without pictures. It's always great to hear from you. Right, large change thematically now, because Valérie Jardin, our street mentor, is going to share her thoughts this week about projects. It's state fair season, it seems.
Valérie, I think you tried to, but I'm not sure you warned me just how hot it would be in Orlando. It was steaming at times. Minnesota, I know, it's hot there too, isn't it?
It gets hot and steamy, but for a few days at a time, and then it's pleasant again for a few weeks. But you were in a place where it never stops being hot and humid. Who goes there in the summer? That's what I'm wondering.
Do you know what I don't understand? The workers on roads, they are a breed apart. They really are. Because I was looking at them thinking, what would make you want to do that job in this weather?
Yeah, it's hard.
It is hard, tough.
They paid well when you're putting tar down and it's 45 centigrade and humid, or firefighters for that matter.
It was the first time I'd experienced this, by the way. You have the alarms and everything going off for what are you? You're in Tornado Alley.
Tornado. We're at the end of Tornado Alley up here in Minnesota. So we do get dozens of tornado warnings a year.
I've never experienced having tornado warnings on the radio before. And it didn't matter what radio station you were listening to, it'd be the same warning across all radio stations. And one came up one day, and I played it at the start of a couple of weeks ago on the program, where the warning was for Flamingo. And we were in the car and we were looking at each other. Do you know where Flamingo is? Where's Flamingo? It's coming 35 miles an hour towards us. Does anybody know where Flamingo is? There was mild panic in the car. Is that what you go through every time you hear the sirens?
Well, to be honest, it's scary. My son did some tornado chasing when he was studying atmospheric physics. Actually, you get some really cool pictures. There are some workshops that do that. One of my client has been on one, really stunning photograph. But so you really have to take it seriously. It's the kind of thing like, it's probably going to pass right by. Well, it may not, and it goes through cities and it destroys homes. And I have to tell you this quick story. My mom, obviously, from France, came to visit many times, and once during tornado season.
Right.
And alarmed, the sky turns green. I mean, it's really something. So you have to go to the lowest room in your home, under staircase, if you can, away from window. So you know the drill, right? You go down, and then I'm down there. My mom, with the children, we were young. My mom is panicking, and all of a sudden she said, "My purse, my passport." She had left everything upstairs, and she's like, "I gotta get my passport." What she had, she imagined like Twister, the house was gonna, which could happen. But I said, "No, I don't care. If your passport is gone, we'll have bigger problems than your passport."
Yeah. You do get those feelings, don't you, of the as you say, the Twister movie, or like the Wizard of Oz with the whole house flying through the air, which I know you should never be comical when you're talking about, or be wary of being too comedic when you're talking about that, because it affects so many people.
It's scary. I mean, one touchdown just a few miles from us a few years ago, and there were people died. I mean, it does happen. Yeah. And so it's like one of those things, like it won't happen to me. Well, it might. You take the warning seriously.
Well, to Minnesota is where we are this month, and there's a massive event coming up. You've covered it a few times. I had no idea how big. I know. Is it that every American state fair will say we are the biggest and the best, or is Minnesota actually the biggest and the best?
Well, it's we get the most attendance for the 12 days. Some are longer. Some go for 3 weeks. Texas, actually, I think is the most attendance, but I think theirs is much longer because everything is bigger in Texas. You know that. The Minnesota State Fair and the State Fairgrounds are by far the most beautiful in the country. It's like a city. It's all tree lined streets. It's permanent buildings. It's over 320 acres of this. It's a city. It really is like a city with streets. Actually, we when the kids learn to drive, we usually take them to the fairgrounds. You're not supposed to, but because it's a city with stop signs and there is the police, the State Fair police.
Hang on a moment.
Even when it's not State Fair season, the State Fair police is still there. It's huge.
Your kids learn to drive on Minnesota State Fair premises.
Yes, because you don't have a whole lot of traffic, so it's perfect, but it's still the same as a real street. So yeah, it's a big deal. And coming from France, I didn't see, it's something you have to be, I think, to be born here to really fully understand. And it took me years to really learn to appreciate it. To me, it was just, we used to call it the Great Minnesota, it's called the Great Minnesota Get Together, right? But everybody calls it the Great Minnesota Sweat Together because it's at the end of August. We get those hot, steamy days. It's millions of people. It's just crazy. And so it's overwhelming until you start looking at it through a lens. And that's when I started appreciating it. When I started going behind the scenes in the barns or going to the midway where all the rides are at nighttime, and see the light on people's faces and the joy on the children's faces, waiting in line to get onto the next big thrill. So then you slow down and you look at it so differently. So now I go several times over the 12 days. I go at least 6 times. But for short spans, because I'm not a crowd person. It's too crowded for me, so I could not spend the whole day. People go from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m., and they spend the entire day there. There are over 300 food vendors, if you can just imagine. There's free entertainment, hundreds and hundreds of free concerts for 12 days throughout the fair. And then every night you have a major concert, but they're big names. I mean, Taylor Swift sang there a long time ago at the State Fair. So there are some big names. I don't think she would come back to the Minnesota State Fair now. But the venue is probably too small.
Well, having said that, I mean, you weren't exaggerating when you said millions of people come, because that's an expression in conversation, but actually it's a very real number because across the length of time this runs, is it 2 million?
2 million.
You said 2 million.
Yeah, over 2 million. The best year I think was over 2 million. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So look, for the photography of it, I'm going to leave a link obviously to the State Fair Moments page on your website. And we've talked about a couple of these pictures before. I think the young lad in the Frisian blanket was mentioned before as one of the one we were talking about humour within pictures. You've got great access here. Is that just because you've taken the time to go into the barns? We'll take the barn bit first, or that you have special passes?
No, I don't have special passes. This is during the State Fair. I mean, those kids spend the nights with their animals. There are over 20,000 animals going through the fair on over the 12 days. The barns are, I mean, it's high tech. The operations at night are really impressive. That's something I would really like to photograph sometime, is to have access after hours to see how everything is cleaned up for the next days. It's really quite a something. But all the moments in the gallery were actually shot during fair hours. But a lot of people just don't take the time to go, where they shower the cows or the horses, or where they watch them behind the scene comb the tail of the cow so that she looks her best, or spray, because there is a cow spray for the tail before they go by the judges. And those animals are well taken care of. They have fans blowing on them all the time. They have showers if it's hot day. So it's really interesting to watch that. And I never have to ask to take pictures. People don't, they do their thing. They're so focused.
That's the amazing thing about this set of photographs is I think as you look through the entire collection, I'm sure there's many, many hundreds more than this, but as you look through the entire collection that's available online, they all look like behind the scenes pictures. It really is a case of putting yourself in the position to make the pictures, isn't it? It's not it's not a BTS project necessarily, but you've made it into one.
Yes, because, I don't like crowds. So I really try to isolate my subject. And to me, it's about the intimacy in the moment. And so trying that in an event where on any given day there are several 100,000 people shoulder to shoulder at times, especially on weekends, and try to isolate is quite an experience, and it's quite an exercise. And so that's also the challenge. That's what keeps me going. And to see something I haven't seen yet. I've lived here for half my life, and I've been there many, many times. But seeing it through this project has really made me appreciate it more. And I feel sad when it ends, to be honest, having to wait an entire year.
One of the things that we've got, I suppose we've kind of got a state fair, a county show, and I go to county shows. They are the absolute best place to go and photograph people just being people, aren't they? What do you enjoy most about these events? What's your pleasure?
I find that I'm mostly drawn towards the kids interacting, like in the barns, where their special pig or their special cow, and the care they take. I love that part. I love watching the wonderment in their faces, whether it's at the amusement park section of the fair or watching the miracle of birth. There are thousands of births happening in a big, big air-conditioned building where you actually witness birth, like whether it's a lamb or a pig, and it's really you can't touch. It's really well done because I love animals, so I couldn't go there if I felt like the animals were uncomfortable or anything. But they're really well taken care of, and watching children who've never even seen a piglet before, watch them being born live. So it's pretty special, and so. Every year it's something different. The vibe can be different. It's definitely different from one part of this giant fairgrounds to the other. And so I'm actually excited to go after this recording to go to the real behind the scenes before it opens, because now vendors are setting up their booth. They're bringing all the food and the oil for the fries, and it's crazy.
That must be tankers.
300 food vendors. 300 food vendors.
Tankers full of oil to start with.
They don't smell too good at the end of the day.
Yeah. In that we have new audience all the time, here's a question that you will have answered before, a good few times with me. This event is a truly colourful event, obviously. There's the fairground, there's, as you say, the wonderment, the lights, the characters. Well, there's quite a few people kissing here as well, actually. Why black and white?
I started it in black and white because I was shooting at night. When it became a project, I was drawn to the midway where the rides are at nighttime, where the only light I had to work with was the light from the rides on people's faces. And I really liked that mood. And so at night, I don't like color. I just don't think the color looks very good. The white balance is really hard to adjust correctly to all the different light sources. So I find that black and white was moodier. And then when you start a project in black and white, you kind of have to continue it in black and white. This will probably be an exhibit next year in August, before the State Fair opens, actually. So that may be the end of this project. And who knows, once I'm done with this one, which will probably be a book as well, then maybe I will start the State Fair in color. But that will be a completely different vibe, and I'll be looking for completely different things. Color will be the subject. And there is a lot of it, you're right. I look more at the emotion, and I find that color distracts from the emotion. I get close to people with my 23mm lens. And so I find that the color around the subject will distract from that emotion a lot of time.
So you're straight off to Minnesota now, then, to start work. Now you've got a form of passes for this particular one for various reasons. Do you think you might get the nighttime pass? Because that would be
maybe next year. Yeah, that would be nice. Next year.
I think that would be a really interesting thing to see. Yeah. Well, good luck. I'm going to give you advice this time that I'm sure you gave me last time. Make sure you wear lots of sunscreen.
Definitely.
And my thanks to Valérie Jardin, who I think may return to share the experiences she had at the State Fair next month. The wind's getting up, actually. It did say tomorrow's going to be quite a brisk day as well. See? That lovely sunshine we started the week with. That must mean you've got a wedding coming up, Neil. Oh, yes, it does. I'm going to a super place at the weekend. Oh, I can't wait. It's an observatory at the top of a hill in Bristol, just looking down onto the famous Clifton Suspension Bridge. Oh, really, really looking forward to it. There's some friends of mine that are going to be there as well. I might well take the dead cat, which is, if you haven't heard it before, that's the word for the little fluffy thing that fits on the top of the microphone, so you don't hear the wind whistling through the microphone pickup, because there's one particular friend there you might know. Say no more. Anyway, Toby Binder is here in a moment with part 2 of our chat, but first a letter has come flooding in from Susan Larsson. Hello, Neil, from Swedenland, says Susan. I'd all but forgotten about sending this photo in for the shutter sink before our trip. That was the garage one. You're garage cleaning, aren't you, as you listen to the show? I'm sure did we use that one? I'm sure we did. I wanted to comment on the episode about social media. The first person you cited regarding social media gave a wish list for social media that actually does already exist. It's Vero, which is by photographers and for photographers. No advertising. You curate the type of photography you're interested in by following photographers with a similar style. You see everything that people you follow have posted in the order it was posted. No algorithms, no reels, no advertising. What, Susan? A world without algorithms? This is surely not possible. I digress. But can you imagine trying to explain algorithm and social media to somebody from yesteryear? And since we mentioned him already, what about William Shakespeare? Can you imagine that? Sitting him down. So, Will, we need to talk about this new thing called algorithms. All right. What is it? Well, it's like your plays. But instead of deciding which ones to perform based on, the crowd's cheers and what they like, there's an invisible scribe who secretly picks what they think should be your most popular lines and shoves them in front of everyone, over and over and over again, until even Romeo and Juliet start to feel like Hamlet. Will that work for you? I'll get back to you. Anyway, says Susan, I can't remember if it was the same person or someone else who said that you get out of social media what you put into it. The more you engage with others, comment on their photos, the more you get in return. My husband, in brackets also a photographer, has avoided social media forever, but he loves Vero and has engaged with people from all over the world for the very first time. I recently returned, says Susan, to Instagram because my kids wanted to see the photos I took on the great night of the Northern Lights, and was lured into participating in 100 Days of Nature. Now, I am attaching a photograph from the Northern Lights night. Try saying that quickly. She says this photo walk involved walking from our house to our pond and then around the pond for different vantage points. It was truly amazing. That counts as a photo walk, it does. A pond, no matter the length of the walk, that is a photo walk. As always, thank you for your wonderful podcast. You make my cooking days and my garage cleaning days that much more fun. Susan, I am pleased to be your garage cleaning companion. And that wonderful, wonderful Northern Lights picture, really gorgeous. That is on the show page today, so it is. And I think this is a pretty good juncture to return to my guest, Toby Binder, for part 2 of our conversation today.
Toby, I'd like to start this second part of our chat, still on the subject of the photographs you shot of the wee muckers, another name for the youth of Belfast, a colloquial term. You took the book back to those you photographed for the project, for this work recently, and you placed it in the hands of those you'd been photographing as a nice surprise, really. What did they make of seeing themselves on the pages of a book?
Yeah, it was a great moment because, in the beginning when I started the project, I didn't know what will be the outcome, if there will be a book, if there will be any publication, what will happen. And in the end, I hoped that we can make a book, and I told them, hey, we will try to make a book, but I couldn't promise anything. And then when it was really done and printed and I could bring back all the copies to all the families, this was great, because till today it's tricky to take photos of teenagers, because normally you need written permission of the parents at least when you publish the work. And so it was really great when I could, when I also got in touch with all the families, and I could bring them the book. And I think 2 years ago, I was just in the streets, and a woman came to me and said, "Are you the photographer?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm a photographer. So did you make the book? And thank you so much." There was such an appreciation that we really made the book, and I could at least give something back to them, because they gave to me a lot. So it's always good if you can give something back.
Well, you do still return, which suggests to me there's something beyond the photography. I think when you keep returning somewhere, it becomes something about you, something maybe in your heart that sort of connects you to a place. What is it about Northern Ireland now that takes you back? It can't just be the photography.
No, it's the people, definitely the people. I know so many people now there, and I met them when they were 16 back in 2017. So many things happened, and it's good to come back and to see the people again, and of course also to keep on photographing. It's always a surprise when I come back. I don't know who I will really meet. I don't know what the situation in the life is. It's really up and down all the time. I met one guy in 1 year, everything was fine. The next year it was big catastrophe with lots of bad things. There too many drugs and all these kind of things. And then you come back 1 year later and it's maybe a little bit better again. And so you never know what will happen.
We seem intensely interested for some reason. I've never quite got it in celebrity. The stories that you make, the places that you go, are not about celebrity. But I somehow feel that has, if not pulled apart traditional media, it's certainly made it harder for magazines, for newspapers to show these important stories of what's going on around the world. Do you get a sense for that? If I speak to a British journalist, they often say, if I was telling the story about such and such celebrity, I know I'll be on the next jet out. It's getting harder to tell stories about the rest of the world.
Well, probably it's getting more difficult to sell any story right now, because the media completely changed, and it's no secret and no news that there are less and less good magazines, good newspapers to publish stories. So there's just not these possibilities anymore. But I think at the moment there is happening a lot. So I think you still can publish stories, but probably not for the same money that you used to get for it maybe 15 or 20 years ago. And that's some kind of problem, because it's getting more and more difficult.
It's an Olympic year, 2024. Another particular story caught my eye from your portfolio, a project from the favelas to the Olympics, referencing one hillside neighbourhood of Rio. The story of two rather special young ladies who, despite the obstacle of not necessarily growing up in an area where their skills would be naturally nurtured, they became Olympians. Tell me about these wonderful women. Rafaela now is 32, actually. She's still a Pan-American champion. I looked her up. She's had a remarkable career.
Yeah, brilliant. Great story. If you see something like that, it reminded me of the little boy in Scotland that told me he wants to become a professional footballer and somehow get out of the poverty. And it was exactly the same with these two sisters. They took us to the place where they grew up, and, it was a very dangerous place and very rough place. And they really made it out of their ability and with their strength, and made a great career. And I think it was, I remember right, it was the first gold medal for Brazil that they won in Rio. So it was a very nice story.
We talk often on this show about the glorious passport to curiosity that photography is. It is, isn't it? Photography is an incredible way to see the world, but more importantly, to see people.
Absolutely. I mean, back in the days, one of my really best friends from art school, he once said, well, Toby, sometimes I believe you shoot the camera without a film in it, You just use the camera to get in touch with the people and to talk to them. And in the end, I never did that, but it was not too far away from from reality, probably, because it's a great tool and a powerful tool. I mean, I still believe that you can do things. You can use photography for a better change.
We had our own African adventure on the show this year, although we went to West Africa. You've not long returned from landlocked Malawi on the other side of Africa. Tell me about, it was an assignment, wasn't it? Tell me about that assignment and what you were doing.
Well, this was a very emotional return. I mean, it was this time it was really for an assignment. It was an assignment for a German organization. They take care of blind people, mostly children in Malawi. And, it was really very emotional to see. We visited the family, and the little girl had cataract and couldn't see. Then we went with her to the operation, which is really not a big thing today anymore. Yeah. So it was just a 1-hour operation. And this little operation changed the life of this little girl and the whole family just from one side to the other. I mean, this is from blind to see within 1 hour. Yeah. And then you realize, okay, this family couldn't afford the operation. But the problem was that they couldn't even afford the transport from their home to the hospital. And that's why they couldn't get the operation for the little girl. So if you see these things that are real problems for people, and then you see what people, for example, in Germany think are a problem, this is something that makes you really think about many things. And this was why I came back. But I was in Malawi already 16 years ago to make a documentary about a hospital where one of my friends was working as a gynecologist. It was a hospital where women could go to give birth for free, because normally they have to pay if they go to the state hospital. I made this documentary and I showed some photos in Germany, and then we decided to try to support them. And I asked him what the main problem is, and he said, okay, we just don't have enough midwives. So we started in Germany a little campaign and a crowdfunding campaign to educate midwives in Malawi. There was no organization, nothing. It was just some friends, and in the end, we could finance the education of 13 midwives. And I never came back to Malawi after that. And now, after 16 years, I could come back, and I went to the same hospital again, and I met one of my friends again. So it was a very emotional return to Malawi.
Yeah. Are you likely to go back again soon? It looked, when I read what you'd said, I thought, this is obviously somebody who's itching to get back on a plane as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I would love to travel all the time, but now that I have 2 kids my own here, two young kids, it's not that easy anymore, and it needs more planning, more organization, but of course, I mean, I'm still very keen to travel, to find new places, new stories, and
I always end these conversations with one word. It's a question. What is your why?
I told you I didn't become a professional football player, so I had to do something else.
It can't be as simple as that. There must be something that draws you to this your inquisitive mind. I see it in your photographs. I see it by the places you go to. I hear it with the emotion you have when it comes to that little girl in Malawi going from not seeing one hour to having vision the next.
Yeah, I think in the end it's really to meet these kind of people. When I was in Kurdistan just a month ago, actually I went there because one of my friends, he is from there. And when he came to Germany, I promised him, hey, one day I will come to your home country and I will see everything. And I don't know if you believe me, but finally we made it in April. And I went there, and I only had 1 week, so not much time, but I wanted to just shows some things that are now happening, 10 years after the genocide of ISIS on the Yazidi people. And with his help, I got really good access and I could do something. I came back and maybe didn't bring that many photos that I hoped to get. I mean, I got some good material, but you always hope to get more.
Yeah.
But in the end, I realized I came back and I really felt so good because it was all these people I met and this hospitality and these friendly people, the same now in Malawi. I mean, so many good people I met, and I think that is what keeps me going. So that's what I mentioned before. I think I have to like the people I work with, and it's always nice if you feel that it's hopefully very often the other way around. So when I come back to Belfast, for example, I meet so many people I don't know. They just in the streets and hey. So I like to connect with people.
And my sincere thanks to Toby Binder. I have more than a passing feeling that he's going to be returning to the show because there are so many more stories that I'd like to talk to or with him about and for him to share. And, that's it for today. If you can't wait until next Friday and you want to walk a little bit further together, the Extra Mile edition number 102 is waiting for you. And it even rhymes. The Extra Mile is part of our private Patreon channel, supported by our wonderful community that we call Extra Milers each week. There's an extra show. You walk the extra mile for me and that you support the show, so I walk the extra mile for you with a microphone, sometimes with letters, often with a guest. And, it's an opportunity, too, to feature our community as stars of that show. This week, though, I'd like to talk to you about a new podcast I'm releasing. Now, the show is called 1000 Weddings. But before you say, oh, Neil, sounds fun, but it's really not my thing. You know me. It's going to be a show which has high production value. It's nothing like the wedding shows out there. Plus, with the guests, I talk about life-making pictures, which includes conversations about vulnerability. It touches on mental health and it engages very much with the why. I have a particular picture that I'd like to talk to you about, which ties in with the start of the show when I mentioned World Photography Day, and I'd like to play you some special moments before it's launched. So you're getting a sneak preview. You really are. There are some teasers that you can hear online now if you do subscribe to 1000 Weddings, but this is an opportunity to hear longer parts of the show that I think touch on some subjects that you'll be really, really interested in. And there are some voices, there are some friends of the show that you'll know well, such as John Dolan, Emily Renier and Adrian Catanese, along with somebody I don't think I've introduced to you before, but I certainly should, actually, on this photo walk show as well. Adam Johnson, who's a friend, who's been a friend for a long, long time now.
On this week's Extra Mile.
I just think that when I compare the two frames, the perfect frame where everything's sharp and everything's perfectly composed, with the other frame that I shot in a moment of excitement or some sort of emotional heightened reality, and I didn't have time to focus, I didn't have time to stabilize the camera, the imperfect picture always feels truer, much more believable. It feels authentic, and it fits with the complexity of a wedding, where the more you try to make everything just so, the more the wedding gods are just going to throw you a lightning bolt or knock over something. So it's really just, it came about not as a thing where I started shaking the camera. It just came about that frame that was slightly off had more resonance to it.
It's funny because obviously we mostly don't want to include something like trash cans in wedding photography, but sometimes if there's elements of the background like a trash can or a building facade, I do say to myself, well, in 20 years, that's going to look nostalgic. Yeah. Like we're looking at Stephen Shore's work and we love the nostalgia of it. When he was shooting that, he wasn't feeling nostalgia. He was capturing the banal. So I think that's important to remember.
Our PS to the show is to come. But before that, we need a play-out song. Something to make some final frames to or think about what's been said today. And I've chosen this. It's, I don't know, it's a song that I like to walk with. And it's from a musician I just absolutely love his voice, Kason Renshaw. This one is called I Know You. That's Kason Renshaw. Wonderful voice. Wonderful, wonderful. Right, a final sketchbook picture from today's show. Oh, Neil, you almost forgot to say picture after the word sketchbook. I didn't. I was there. It is getting much darker now, but I quite like it. It's very moody. Very moody. And dropping my shutter speed right down now. I think I might be able to stay at 60th, actually. I was going to go handheld at 30th, which I've got a pretty steady hand. I can do that. ISO 800, and back along the path here. Let's just get a sketchbook photograph that I'll put on the show page today. As I say, there we go. So many pictures, so many videos, so much linked to on the show page today. It really is one of those, grab yourself, well, a few coffees and definitely a whole packet of Garibaldis, because you're going to be going down a rabbit hole of links and pictures and films for a little while today. It's a good show page. A few closing thoughts before the PS. My sincere thanks to you if you are or you're about to become an extra miler. We'll keep building this wonderful community of kindness in the photographic and walking world together. If you can leave a review on Apple or Spotify, thank you. I'm doing that heartfelt thank you thing there, and I really, really mean it. My thanks to Neil Ford as well, who looks after IT, Andrea Gilpin, who's across Instagram, and Kelly Mitchell, who looks after our Facebook members. Now, the postscript to the show today is from Brené Brown. Now, she is an American professor, a social worker, an author, and also a podcast host, actually. She's known for her work on shame and leadership, and very pertinent to today's show, vulnerability, and also for her widely viewed 2010 TEDx talk on vulnerability. I will put that film on the show page today. I'll embed that film in the video library. When I went to it, I could see that I'd watched it a couple of times, because the play bar was, was pretty much toward the end. So I could see that I'd watched it. It was familiar to me. It's a very, very interesting film. But I think the PS that I'm selecting from Brené is a perfect PS for the show today. And it's this. Vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.